one of the most valuable pieces of partnership is that they are a mirror for us. They give us an opportunity to see and feel how we're showing up. And so eventually my wife held up a mirror when it got like intense enough. And what I saw in that moment was like really devastating, to be honest, a devastating image of myself.
When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise.
Markwell, I am so excited to welcome you to the podcast. I know I sent you a random DM on Instagram because I just came across your profile and I was just started binge watching all your videos because they were just speaking so deeply to me, this aspect of having hard conversations. But one thing that you also responded to me and what you said was having presence in tough moments. And that really like stood out to me as well. So I want to first kick off I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey, because I know you kind of shared with me a little bit about navigating PTSD and that almost costing you your family. I'd love for you to walk us through that and what got you into the work that you do today.
Absolutely. Ashley, thank you very much for having me here. I'd love to share about my story. The pathway backwards from really focusing on the value of tough conversations was in the call for introspection. As a firefighter, got to witness a ton of things in my experience on the job, and I never had the tools or the guidance or leadership or support around me to understand what to do with all those emotions, those feelings that were going through my body. And so what that looked like was, pushing things aside, working harder, and slowly it had an impact on myself and then obviously my partnership. And one of the things that I think is one of the most valuable pieces of partnership is that they are a mirror for us. They give us an opportunity to see and feel how we're showing up. And so eventually my wife held up a mirror when it got like intense enough. And what I saw in that moment was like really devastating, to be honest, a devastating image of myself. And so that was the beginning of introspection and realizing that to navigate all of these pieces that were now in the way of our connection was to, one, go towards them. My first strategy was just avoid everything. And I realized that to repair, explore, to understand both her and myself, I really had to go like directly towards the things that were in the way. And so over, a period of 5 or 6 years here, refining that desire to go towards. So one of the philosophies that I've started to develop is conscious confrontation. How do we confront either the pieces within ourselves or within communication in a way that is conscious, that is present, that is like in the moment? My idea of consciousness is bringing presence into the moment. Right? And what is presence to me? It's being fully engaged in everything that's happening right now, not telling a story of what it used to be or projecting into the future of what it's going to be, just being like really true in the moment. And then confrontation is like, can we both stand together in the truth? And that can be really difficult. And I understand why I in the past avoided it and why in many partnerships, in many just relationships, like all types of relationships, whether it be familial or marriage or friendship, there's this thing that's just sitting right there and it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to go towards that. So that's kind of like a expedited version of how I got to it, but it was love. It was love that called me back into myself and my desire to show up as a father. I'm a father to 3 girls. My wife,
Wow.
when she put up that mirror, she put it up in such a graceful and clear way so that I could really see myself despite the pain that she was in. Yeah, we got an opportunity to walk through this portal, which now as I've stepped into supporting other men to save their marriages, realizing through study and experience that it's almost like the chapters and stages of a partnership. Like that happens in so many partnerships in and around a time of being together. We'll make a little bit of a wide net, but 4 to 7 years, there's 1 to 3 children. Yeah. Things have been tough. We didn't have the tools. And now we are really asked, are you willing to better understand ourselves and the other person to get to the other side? And so often, because we don't consciously confront the relationship, there may be projection or blame of themselves or whatever reason, and the relationship fractures. And when I see that out in the world, I'm like, no, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. This is like this is happening for you. And if you bring consciousness to that confrontation, there's so much gold on the other side. So the final piece, I guess, is to say my belief right now, and I hope to share this with as many people as possible, is that the golden pathway to intimacy and connection is through confrontation. It's one of the fastest ways because we get to better understand what's important to us and the other person.
Oh, you're speaking to my soul on so many levels. I think just in relating in ways to that inward peace and having someone hold a mirror and that inward peace being so important and also coming from a place of love. I think that is such a big piece to the puzzle. There's so many pieces to this puzzle when we talk about confrontation. And I just love the way that your angle and your perspective and your take on it. And, one thing that you were talking about is the inward, but then also being able to understand the other person in the relationship. Because I wholeheartedly agree in what you say that it's not just romantic partnerships. It's not just our marriages, it's friendships, it's familial, it's all of that. We're always in relationship. There are so many relationships around us. So I'm almost curious. This might be loaded and maybe you can take us through, but I guess just what does that look like? The inward piece and then also getting to a place of understanding. I'll leave it at that.
As for the inward piece, when guys come into my work, they often are projecting out, right? They have all these problems with their relationship, with their partner, whatever it is. And the like spoiler that I always make sure to share with them is like, it's about you. No matter what, it's going to be about looking inside. I'm not sure what your connection is to a lovely human being in this world named Ram Dass, but one of the things that I received from him was the only thing we can do for relationships is working on ourselves. That's the only contribution, the only impact we can have is really focusing on ourselves. So that inward piece is, and I think it might even be like a hot take because we do in this time really like to point our fingers, right? So yes to whatever this person may have said. Like, yes, it was nasty. Yes to whatever they may have done. It hurt a lot. And there's always should be, I believe, if we do care to look, what about that touched us? And what did it touch within us? So if somebody is, being rude to me and treating me with disrespect, we can do this a little faster. If I respect myself, then it doesn't hurt. I'm just now, the next piece I like to throw in is like, if I care about this person who's being disrespectful to me, because I've tended to my internal space and I've confronted the parts of me that don't respect myself, now I can be curious about this other person in front of me. If I don't have access to curiosity, and someone is disrespecting me and it really triggers me, there is a space to go look at what about this? What is it touching? It's touching something that already exists within me. And if it is touching something and intimate partnerships are closer, so they have more of an impact, I needed this person to do this thing, say this thing, so that I can bring awareness to this thing that exists within me. And without my wife, without this close friendship, without my parents, I may not have a chance to feel that in this way. And if I don't, then it shows up in all of my relationships in tiny little moments. And a friend of mine years and years and years ago, before I knew anything about this, I was kind of a reactive man, kind of like I didn't like to be disrespected. And he just turned to me. He's like, "Are you fighting your dad everywhere?" And I was like, "My goodness." I think that like this experience I had
Wow.
as a kid of being like overpowered with energy was just sitting in the background behind all of my interactions, particularly with men. And I was never going to let that happen again. So this inward piece is to go and explore and to meet that part of us that, isn't feeling respected. I'm not sure what the second part of your question was, but like
The
as a relationship wise,
yeah.
it is like creating a shift in how we perceive what this moment is with somebody else, right? That can we, if we are curious and desire to grow, can we find gratitude and appreciation for the relationship? Because for a confrontation like that to exist, two people need to be close, which means they must care about something, because if someone didn't care, they would just leave, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever it is, it means that two
Yeah.
people care about something. And now I get an opportunity to better understand myself, which means that if I meet those things as I grow, I show up with more integrity, with more clarity, with more presence in each moment to like fulfill my life in a way that is aligned to me.
Yeah. It's such a powerful moment when, something just is reflected back to you and it's almost like understand why you react or do certain things or, just have a certain way of being, but it just feels like this is normal and this is how I respond. But then the moment someone says something and it just clicks into awareness of, oh my gosh, I understand now why I am this way. And that's what I think that's the beauty of relationships is that mirror that we talk about. That's the point. The
Mhm.
point is for this to rise to the surface so that it can be cleared. It can be cleared with love and being able to allow ourselves to release these parts of ourselves that don't serve our relationships. One piece that I'm going to a little selfishly ask because I related so much to you talking about the avoidance piece. That's definitely a big habit for me or whatever we want to call it. I'm not the greatest. I'm learning always to be better at not avoiding. And, I've learned recently too, and just, my hard conversations, a lot of it has been with my dad, and I've learned so much through that relationship. But I've also learned in just having this avoidance in relationships is what creates walls and distance in our relationships. And so, how have you been able to, I guess, overcome? I don't even know if that's the right word, but overcome this avoidance piece and I guess collapse that time frame of avoiding. I'm not sure what the right word is.
Yeah. I mean, within myself is learning to understand what's happening and finding the courage to go towards it. And the more I go towards it, excuse me, the conversations, for example, with my wife, that used to be something that I would avoid. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to have to deal with this thing. Now I recognize the value of it where it's maybe she's almost annoyed by it, but I'm like, oh my gosh, are you upset with something? Oh, please tell me. Like either I'm going to one, learn more about myself, right? Something that she's seeing and feeling that I'm not aware of, or I'm going to learn more about her. So ultimately the end is, connection, trust, intimacy, closeness. And that takes reps, right? That takes practice. That takes kind of like debriefing with myself and maybe with my partner after to be like, what happened? Okay, I see that. Oh, my abandonment wound really came up when he turned, like all of those things. And so I have understanding and compassion for avoidance. Avoidance is a tool used to protect ourselves, right? And it worked at some point. And we learned this. We learned this
Yeah.
through like what was modeled to us or what was shared inside of our family. Like a lot of people have families where we just never talked about the things. I know my family sit at Christmas dinner with this like elephant in the room until someone had their fourth glass of wine. And then one aunt freaks out and storms off. And like, we're like, as a kid, I'm like, what's happening? Like, what's happening right now?
Yeah.
And so I understand it. And for a chapter in our lives, it worked. And when we come into taking responsibility, and you spoke about that mirror, like the biggest thing we can do for our relationship is to make sure our mirror for the other person is clear, right? So that means that we can't, like if we avoid, then we're turning the mirror completely away. And so
Yeah.
even just to be present to the other person in the confrontation gives us the opportunity to find reps and learn each time. We have some beliefs
Uh-huh.
inside of us that motivate and inform why we avoid. And a lot of that is work that we can do to like go towards our younger self and look at who taught us these things and was it chosen? And, what did this little version of me need in that moment? What did they need to hear from, we get to be the adults that we as kids needed. And ultimately that to me feels like
Mm.
one of the, like a pillar to meet this any kind of a tendency is to from this space, time, wisdom, knowledge, look back at our younger self who learned this behavior and meet them and speak to them and like grab them by the hand and say, it's okay, we can go and try a different thing and I'll be with you. Because that's ultimately is who is
Ugh.
avoiding, right? Like it's this
Yeah.
little
I
Markwell.
get I get goosebumps. Yeah. It gives me chills because that has been such a big piece, at least for me this year, has just really been tending to really reaching that hand out to my little younger self at various different ages. It's almost like something I didn't allow myself. I mean, I've been in this space of personal development and in this for about a decade, but this piece around really tending to my inner child was just never something I allowed myself to even go to. And it was a big protection for a long time, right? Protection, to be honest, like protecting my parents for a long time and
Mm,
just protecting my mom in ways too. And it's hard to go there, but at the same time, it's the thing that becomes the most rewarding because just speaking from my own personal experience of this year, it's been the most transformational experience that I've had is because I've looked at these pieces. I've uncovered this abandonment wound. I've uncovered this like anxious attachment that shows up. And it, again, I've always said, I sound like a broken record, is awareness is power. You know, when we have this awareness, we can choose differently. And I love what you said about, of course, it takes reps, right? It takes that practice and that, okay, I'm going to do this differently next time. And then that window, we become more mindful of how we're dealing with things. And we're not necessarily spending days not talking to our partner. And we maybe spend an hour or whatever the case may be. You know, it eventually comes to that. You see that difference in the relationship. But I also love what you said about the intention piece, because I think the intention that we bring to these confrontations that we have is also everything. You know, when you come with a defensive protection intention and it's just this is what I'm going to say, and it's not going to go the way that you are hoping, right? But coming from a place of love is where everything begins to shift in the confrontation.
Yeah. And like bringing that inner child into these moments when someone is defensive, I like to, with a lot of the guys that I'm working with, just remind them that with every single thing that you do, he's right there. Like, imagine him always walking around, waiting to be like worried, scared, feeling like he needs to be protected. And so when we understand that better and we notice that defensiveness show up, we can take a breath. And this is where like the layers of conscious confrontation come in, give an opportunity to come back into the center of ourselves right now, be in communication, be like, I understand why it feels difficult to be made wrong about this, whatever that is. And just always the goal is to return back to center. And I'm not sure how much you said you went into my Instagram, but a lot of my stuff has to do with like physical fighting. What that practice has always been for me, whether it's boxing or jiu-jitsu, is a practice of returning back to center. It's being called into chaos, into emotions, into intensity. And how much can I return back into center? And that's that, like, is it a shutdown for a week? Or can we reduce that lag time? Can we reduce it to, like, as we're growing, maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 2 days. And ideally, that lag time is always being shortened. And it shows, like, the Gottman Love Institute has the data that shows, like, couples that can reduce that lag time are just more successful. They spend more time turning towards each other than they do turning away. So it's always,
Yeah.
always, always a call back to center to find our breath. Like my boxing terms, but it works in partnership, is like take a step. So you're making a little bit of space from the moment. Take a breath, which means like I'm going to return back to my heart, return back to my presence, take a look at this guy or this person in front of me. And from that position, now I can re-enter into this exchange, whether it be jujitsu or talking about, why the garbage wasn't taken out.
I love the I felt like I was getting the visual imagery and it was really powerful too. And one thing that you said at the beginning too that I also really just loved it and I kind of want to like dive into a little bit more of your perspective of just, when we talk about this like disconnection and this separation happening or just these confrontations that happen bring us into disconnection and that it being something that it's actually working out. And so I'm curious for you to tell us more about that. And also, too, I'm curious, where did you find that shift in this?
So it may sound slightly unusual, but how I found this place to one kind of study, explore, start speaking about was first, I love love, a little bit of an abandonment wound here as well. So like always biased towards connection, right? And in that desire, that means that I'm always moving towards things, which means I'm in confrontation. And when I started to later on in my years here, explore boxing, explore jujitsu, I realized that like the energetic template of these practices are very similar to connection. And what it means is like, how can we train together, right? You don't necessarily know who I'm talking about. Maybe it's my jujitsu partner, or maybe it's my life partner. How can we train together in a way that means that we both grow? That means that we're not getting injured so much that I can't come back on Tuesday, which means like, how can we stay in connection and communication through this tough moment? And I think that sometimes there's a lot of different views on how partnership and life and love should be and what safety means. And safety doesn't mean that we're not going to get hurt in either of the situations. And so when people are hurt, often there's a shutdown, there's a projection. And building tools and awareness that this is actually working out is like the big shift that's available. That safety is more than just not being hurt. It's being cared for when we're hurt. We can infuse safety into this where it's like, I might be in a tough conversation, but if we both know that a pillar of our relationship is we both want to grow together in love and partnership and connection, and I'm in integrity to that, this still might hurt to talk about this thing, right? So why it's working out in these moments is that if we do, and there are tools and communication exercises that can be played out and explored to like better equip us. But if we do bring that awareness that this is going to be hard, it might hurt, but we're in this together, then we both get to grow. The classic saying of like, we get to grow through what we go through, and we go through it together. And on the other side of some of these inner child things coming up, or our defensiveness, and then seeing it with awareness. And like, I love what you said, like with awareness, we get to choose. We have the power to choose. Now we have, oh my gosh, it's happening right now in this moment. Here's my inner child, defending itself. And then with a partner and a mirror who has a clear mirror, and they can, as long as one person can hold their center, it can almost be like, is it possible that in this moment you're feeling a little abandoned? And we can both kind of play in this game together of like pushing and the pulling. I like to think about it as two puzzle pieces. Like they're going to be shifting and moving together. And how can we move and adapt with the other so that like we're listening and offering and contributing, and so that things are working out. And the big shift is like being open, that you have an opportunity to learn more about yourself and the other person, which ultimately is growth. And it means that we can train together.
Yeah.
I can trust you. I can trust my jujitsu partner, and I can trust my wife if we're like demonstrating over and over again that we're willing to be in the hard moments and do the hard things and listen in tough ways, or say the thing that's really important that needs to be said that we know might hurt. And that's what my wife gave me, the most beautiful gift. If she didn't do that, if she didn't put that mirror up clearly and be like very direct and clear about all the ways I was letting her and my children down, I wouldn't have been able to feel the impact without her demonstrating it clearly. And so that time felt like a nightmare. That time felt like an absolute nightmare. But as I've met them over and over and over again, realizing that this is actually a beautiful gift we can offer each other. Now, the important piece is like, are we ready to receive that? And that takes work. And that's where it's like introspection time comes in.
Totally. It just feels, for some reason, the word that comes to mind, because of the way that you talk about this complete shift in how it's all perspective, right? We get to choose how we look at things. And in a way, we can look at things as from a lens of being a victim or not. And I feel like in this perspective, I don't know, I just feel that entire shift in my body of just, we get to choose that perspective when it comes to these relationships. And, part of me, I've had conversations too with my husband. I feel like I come to a lot of just my relationships with this lens in ways. I've never been able to, I guess, pinpoint how to word it. So I love the way you talk about it. But not everyone has that perspective, right? Some of us, and in a way, sometimes it comes from protection, where it's like, they are who they are, and it is what it is. And I understand that too, of sometimes that comes in relationships. And yeah, it's just such an interesting dynamic to see. But I just feel that shift in my entire body of just how expansive it feels. That's the word that I've been looking for, expansive. To be in relationship and to look at it from this lens of when we're going to have these hard moments, because 100% they're going to come up, because that's what happens. We're humans with emotions. It's not something that we have to run from. And that safety piece that you were talking about, so huge as well. I mean, safety has been like a very interesting thing that has come up so much for me. And I didn't necessarily always look at it from the lens of, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get hurt, but the safety of being able to be that, to come into relationships, for both people to come with confrontation. That's a really important part to relationships, is to feel safe to say the truth, to say what's on our heart, and not feel like we're going to be judged from the other end, from the receiving end.
Yeah. There's a sentence that I love to infuse in almost any confrontation, whether I'm involved in it or I'm involved in mediating it. There's like layers of openness that I like to call in. And it's like, can you imagine the possibility that a reasonable person might end up feeling this way. Like there's so many layers of imagination that get called into that. But what that means is that we can create some space around this where we, if the initial experience feels very tight and their reaction created defensive nature inside of us or whatever it was that was triggered, a little space comes from that. Like, can you imagine the possibility that this person is a reasonable person and based off of what happened, that might be a response or a trigger or reaction that would make sense. And so what that invites, which I think is the disruptor to all confrontation, and it's a great litmus test to check in, is it brings curiosity. If you want to know, if you're triggered inside of a confrontation, is check in. Am I actually curious about this person in front of me? Or am I now just insisting on being right, defending my position, or trying to get out of here? Right? Curiosity is like, if I had to leave one piece on the table for how to navigate confrontation, is like, grab your curiosity stick and just hold on to it the whole time. Don't let it go. Because curiosity is curiosity both towards another and also for ourselves. Because you could do it for yourself too. So often we beat ourselves up about our
100%.
reactions, right? And we can say, can I imagine the possibility that I'm a reasonable person and this was a difficult situation and it touched something in me that, feels really like a lot? Yes, it is. Now with that curiosity, I'm like, well, what did it actually touch? What's going on here? Let's go digging.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of also want to talk a little bit about the more masculine side of the confrontation piece. Like, do men and women really handle conflict differently? And if so, how as women, I'm going to come from this perspective, can we support men?
Yes. So that I think like there are templates and like energetic patterns. And while they, like all things, give us more information to work with, I don't like to look at them as rigid or all the time has to be this way. Like, there are
Yeah.
qualities that I like to bring in and I feel way more connected to them than my wife is into a confrontation. And there are also sometimes where I'm not able to embody those things in this moment. And it doesn't make me less of a man or a partner. Can shift and share these responsibilities or pillars of energetic contribution. In saying that, through the work that I've done, I have seen things that just tend to work. One of the jokes that I have is and this is a joke, but it's very real. Like the feminine really desires to be understood. They don't necessarily want us to, which is a common trap that happens. Yeah, it's all over the place, but like to fix, to just come in and be like, I'll take this off of your plate and I'll just do it. They don't really want that because it means that we're not listening. And one of the other pieces, it means that we're not okay with the feminine not feeling well. Good. So if our desire to fix is like, actually, you know what? I'm not really good with these feelings right now. And I'm just going to fix the situation so you don't have to feel it. And then therefore I don't have to feel it. There's so many layers to this. It's showing that the man doesn't have his own personal boundaries, which is not safe. Like we're talking about safety, right? If someone is desiring just to fix, it's because they are porous. And so your emotions now become my emotions and we're both not doing well. The feminine wants to be understood. So one of my Instagram posts is like, what I think I heard you say was, did I get that right? Is there any more? And then this next piece I've had discussion about too with my wife. But like one question is like, how can I support you? Or, then moving into taking action in some way. But it's like reflecting. It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated about, me not taking the garbage out. Is that accurate? And she's like, yeah, that is, I did ask you. I'm like, cool. I'm like, then you drop into, is there any more? And she's like, well, actually, because it's never about the garbage. It's always about something bigger, right? She's like, well, actually, yeah, like, you haven't been, fulfilling on these other commitments that are likely larger. And this garbage just acts as like a proxy war for that moment.
Yeah.
And so it gives us an opportunity to open up that space. The reverse to it is that for the most part, the masculine wants just to be acknowledged. We're more often like, we don't need you to know the details of how crappy our day was or like all of the things that we had to do, but we do want you to like respect us. And respect is a kind of like the outcome of like acknowledging that like, man, you must have had a tough day. So what ends up happening often in the psyche of a man is that when they're in a argument, the story comes up, and it's amazing how it's like for so many men, the story comes up with like, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to make a big deal about the garbage? Do you have any idea what my day has been like?
Yeah.
Is this resonating in some way?
It is big time because me and my husband, 100%.
Yeah. So like it's kind of just to decode like how communication, like we're throwing out these words and we're talking about like the garbage, but there's so much, a whole other layer of energy moving back and forth. So, in that, inside this garbage analogy, the frustration of not being acknowledged for the work he's doing in wherever else in his life, or the stress or the burdens that he's carrying, whatever the weight, it becomes, why are you making such a big deal about the garbage? Which now shoots back to being like, it sounds like you don't understand me, because this is important to me. And now both of those pillars, which is the feminine's desire to be understood and the masculine's desire just to be acknowledged and respected, are now like flipped upside down. Feminine not feeling understood and the masculine not feeling respected and acknowledged. So again, with awareness, we get the power to choose things differently. And if one were to want to have the garbage taken out, it could be to acknowledge, like, I know maybe it's been a really busy day and you didn't get a chance to get around to it, but it would be really helpful for me if you can get that out of here, because it's really sticky and messy and I don't want to have to deal with that. Now we're almost like laying out a pathway for him to step into purpose, to impact, to support, which is like quite nourishing for us, right? To like not necessarily be the hero, but kind of like to like feel like we have value here. And if we go do that, more than likely the person who wanted that to happen feels understood. I was able to express myself and something happened that feels supportive. I can do this for hours and hours, like decoding messages back and forth. But if you think about those pillars of the feminine desiring to be understood and the masculine desiring to be acknowledged, that looks like understood, more open, connected communication, more presence, like not necessarily fixing things, but just being present to what's true, consciously confronting it. And from the other side is that respect piece, like being able to be spoken to and connected to. Not like the last thing a man wants to feel is like being talked to by his mother, or being like made to feel wrong, like a little boy in some way. And that comes through with respect, and which doesn't mean that we're not talking about what's true. It just means that it's shared in a way that is like, this might be triggering for some women. I'm not sure. I've had some tough discussions about things, but like honoring their man, honoring him for the many things that he's doing that like you may never know about, in a good way, like his contributions. So yeah, those two pillars feel like the best way to describe that.
Yeah, I feel like it almost feels like this beautiful starting point almost, if bringing that level of awareness to conversations, the difficult conversation, it can create like this micro shift that changes something. And I love that so much, because I feel like it is so true. And just as much as we want to be honored as women, men want to be honored as well. And we always have to remember that too. It's both sides, I think we can be such selfish, ego-driven beings, okay? That's out there, but if you want something, equally another human wants that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I like you. Thank you for dropping that in there. When I said like for the feminine to honor their man is not it's not a one-way street. Like what a beautiful gift it is for both of us to like really honor our partners, like and tough, maybe hot takes too, but like honor the ways in which they hurt and the ways in which they defend themselves and in ways in which they hurt us. Can we bring like reverence to this little tiny person inside of them who's hurt right now? Like I have a whole sort of call it like a chapter or module in some of the programs I do, which is like, can you really see her? Like, have you gotten through, the nagging? Because my favorite thing to do is to work with men who are like either their partner is already called a divorce lawyer or somebody has cheated. Like it's really, the intensity is there. And so really peeling back all those layers and all the things that ways they're showing up to like really see them clearly. Like the little tiny person inside who's really hurt right now and is having a hard time taking a breath, taking a step, coming back to their heart and being present to these things. And there's words that flow out there with like masculinity or like a partnership. And like there is, I believe, a pillar of leadership, which is like if there is challenge in the relationship, I do feel, and it can feel like a lot and it doesn't feel fair, but it works, that there's a certain level of leadership required of the man, of the masculine, to create a disruptor, to guide us back to center, to call us into connection, to if even just calmness is what is being asked for. Like that by doing almost nothing, which is like returning back to ourselves, we can lead in that way, right? Coming back to our hearts
Yeah.
is a leadership action.
So good. There's so much. I could listen to you talk for hours. I mean that. I could sit here for hours just being in conversation with you. I feel like this felt like a scratching a little bit of the surface, and there's so much more to dive into. I always love to kind of close conversations with asking these three questions, and a lot of it's interesting actually when we were talking about it, this curiosity piece, because I feel like what I've learned along the journey of, when we go inward and we do this work, I kind of look at these pillars of curiosity, it's being curious about yourself and what's being triggered within you. And then I also see the courage. I mean, it's just wild that we've talked about kind of all these different pieces, but the courage to then to face, to work through, to navigate whatever it is that is coming up for us. And then the last pillar that I believe is so true is compassion, because when we have to give ourselves so much compassion and grace when we are doing this work and we are learning new ways of being, of things that were never taught to us. It's hard work, and
Yes.
it's not always going to be perfect. It's going to be messy at times. And so I always love asking three questions kind of in these areas. So the first thing I would love to ask you is, what's something that you're currently curious about in your own healing, growth, relationship, yourself?
What a question. Yeah, the first thing that came up felt like pretty intense, to be honest. My curiosity is in my courage to shine. I know that I have this thing that is really supportive, right? Like it's just this funny piece of that I'm starting to really embody, being like talking to men about like trying to help them or connecting my help to them and being like, I have this thing. Like I have this thing. It's right here and I want to share it with you. And not having the courage to really own that and express that. I'm not like kind of like the classic, like playing small and what it is about that. Like I've done some really tough stuff in my life, and being fully me, like fully me feels like it's being blocked in some way. So my curiosity has been on that, on how to, and like stepping into this with you is an expression of that, of being like, I'm out there. You want to hear from me? I'm in, let's talk. And it's funny because like my identity inside of life has been quite the opposite. Like I used to be a professional dancer. I was a mascot for a team that plays baseball in our local area for 15 years. And so like
Wow.
there's a performance element of me that exists, but in each one of
Mm.
those things, even as a firefighter, like there's an identity, but they never fully felt like, they felt like almost like a mask, not like a really open, clear expression of my light. So in this way, where I'm talking about like these things that are really raw and real for me because I've lived it, I've lived that pain, I've lived that terror and like what's happening inside of my partnership, to openly stand and share that feels a lot more difficult. So my curiosity is
Mm.
to that. I see it as like an energy channel that is blocked in some way.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing that. I can feel how just deeply personal that is. And I'm just I feel so honored to have just experienced that and you sharing that. And I mean, it's you showing up, and it's also something so deeply close to our hearts and personal. And it's like, yeah, I'm curious to see what you unpack in all of that.
Oh, I'm working on
uh,
it.
Yeah, a work in progress always. What's one brave or risky, like what's one risk or brave choice that you've made recently that's kind of made a shift for you?
Um, okay, it's kind of in this same line. I have not been shining in the fullest expression of myself in many ways. And uh like in the month of like September into October, I was like, I'm putting this thing together. I'm making a website, made my first website, thepowerfulpartner.com, making something accessible, like putting it all there, like the price and call booking links and like just the whole thing, like just having it right out there. And
Yeah.
I went for a walk with a guy who kind of call him like a social media mentor. Like he's really figured it out. And I was like, well, he's like, well, what are you scared of? I'm like, what if nobody comes through this thing? And he said, he got really close and got quiet. And he's like, if nobody comes, nobody will know that nobody came. And, um, it was that simple. And I did it. And
Yeah.
one of the other pieces that came through from that is that, like, when we take courageous action, it really is asking us to detach from the outcome that we think is available. And so while the outcome of it wasn't what I intended, it actually brought in way more energy into my life than what I had initially imagined. So I'm recalibrating that website, thepowerfulpartner.com. But I imagine that whenever this gets posted, I've been working on it day by day here. It'll be ready to be checked out. And so, yeah, that was a very, like, it felt very raw again, like very open and unsafe. But I went towards it, put it out there, and yeah, the outcome that I was worried about came true. But also, it opened up other avenues of connection to other men that now I'm working with, like one-on-one. So yeah, super great.
Yeah, so cool. Oh, I love that so much. And I guess maybe this feels a little in line with everything too, maybe, but where in your life are you learning to give yourself a little bit more grace and compassion?
Actually, the grace and compassion piece I'm going to bring towards my body.
Mm,
I'm 43 years old. I'll be turning 44 in about a month, actually, a month and 2 days. And in my past, when I would get an injury, like as a firefighter, as a mascot, as a professional dancer, it was very devastating. It's a big deal. It changes my identity. And so it got followed up by depression and disconnection, and like almost like my worth is now compromised. Like for many, many years in my life, the only way I made money was through using my body to perform, to have impact. And those patterns still exist. So when I hurt my back, when my knee feels a little interesting, I notice it and I start to notice these things coming up. And I'm like, how can I meet this in a new way? And prepare myself,
mm.
because I'm only getting older. I don't know if everyone realizes this, but we're getting older every day. Like, if I don't meet this now at 43, almost 44, then what is the story I'm going to be experiencing at 62? How am I going to be navigating? I still think at 62, I'll be, crushing it. I'm hoping at like 82, 92, I'm like, got the sweatband on and like 2-pound weights with a tracksuit kind of thing. Yeah. Bringing compassion to my body in the ways that it's like really caring for me. And then sometimes when it needs, I need to care for it in a different way. Like maybe it isn't doing squats today. Maybe it's stretching. Yeah, that feels like the solid answer and what came up for me when you asked me about compassion.
I love that. No, I love that so much, and I'm so grateful for you, and I've just been so honored, like, that's the word that comes up is just I'm so honored to have been in conversation with you too. Yeah, it's just been such a beautiful conversation in so many ways, and it's been just so nourishing for me, and even little pieces of insight that I know I'm going to for sure, being the person that I am that's curious, is going to go inward, and also bringing this into my own relationships at the same time. I'm already just thinking of it in those ways. And that's going back to kind of what I said earlier. It's like these little tiny micro shifts. The one thing that you can take from let's say this conversation that stood out, and you bring that
Hmm.
into your conversations, into your relationships. That's everything. That's everything. It's not about let's change this entire dynamic of we're going to do it this way. It's not about that. That's not like, necessarily true and authentic. It's just how can I be more present in this conversation? I'm going into this hard conversation. How can I bring more presence into it? That one place that we begin. So there's just so many pieces that you shared in this that I feel like are just so incredible. And I'm so grateful. So thank you for being here. Thanks for this work that you've done for
Appreciate that.
yourself, for being curious and going inward. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the one piece I wanted to just reflect to you is that you said it's so wild that we're like almost tuning into these same words that came through in this conversation. And what I'm tuning into it's not about me or anything else except tuning into the truth of what's available for everybody. So it is not surprising that like through your experience of life and through mine that we found these things that are actually like kind of like the fabric of what makes life, love, and connection valuable and potent. It's available to everybody. And it's more so about getting the things out of the way than infusing things into the space. And that's where this conscious confrontation piece comes in. Like, how can we come towards the things that are actually in the way if there's one thing we can always do is just take a breath. To integrate anything into any of the people who listen to this is in the moment when you feel the growth, the tension, when you witness it, when it feels confusing, you're angry, you're upset, they're pointing, you're pointing, whatever's happening. If we can infuse a breath into those moments, everything changes. Everything changes. It's step one.
Step one. And even to placing that, I mean, that hand on heart too. I feel like I did that today. I felt myself. And that's like a new practice in a way too. I think I very intentionally felt myself. And I was like, just for as long as you need, just like breathe right here and just
Mm.
know that you're safe right now. And that, it's like you said, changes everything. And I
Everything.
feel like that's the perfect place. The
Beautiful.
perfect pieces that you end in this conversation. I'm so incredible. So thank you.